state of Punjab gives 70,000 acres to its neighbour Haryana in return for the northern capital, Chandigarh. The deal is meant to strengthen the Indian government's fragile alliance with the Punjabi Sikh moderates and to appease militant Sikhs demanding their own independent state. However, it's also part of Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi's new softly approach to the Punjab problem, clearly visible earlier this month when government forces were told to stand by as Sikhs were allowed to reoccupy the Golden Temple of Amritsar. In a special report, Mark Tully has been tracing recent tension in the Punjab and looking at how the Indian government hopes to quell and overcome it.
Two years ago, the Indian Army fought a grim battle against the Sikh extremist leader Sant Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale inside this sacred complex. Operation Blue Star was meant to be a speedy commando action, but it turned into a bloody night-long battle involving tanks and artillery. Tanks were driven onto the marble pavements surrounding the pool in which the Golden Temple itself stands. It symbolizes God's supremacy in matters spiritual. Opposite the Golden Temple used to stand the Akal Takht, a magnificent shrine which symbolized the authority of God in the affairs of this world, in politics. During Operation Blue Star, the Akal Takht's front was reduced to rubble by squash-head shells fired from tanks. This picture of the battered shrine stands inside the complex to remind Sikhs of that operation. In spite of all it cost the government to regain control of the Golden Temple complex, they allowed Sikh militants to recapture it in January. The militants pulled down the Akal Takht, which the government had repaired, and started rebuilding it themselves. This time the police and commandos were able to oust the militants. The temple complex is now officially back in the hands of the Temple Management Committee. But the militants do not accept that. Paramilitary forces were used to keep attendance at the rally to a minimum. Traffic on all roads leading into Amritsar was checked. Government servants with identity cards were allowed to continue their journeys by bus. Other Sikhs were told to get down and walk. The police were kept outside the complex because the government knew that their presence would offend pious Sikhs and incite the militants to violence. The rallies were controlled by the students themselves. Mrs. Bimal Khalsa, the widow of one of the Sikh bodyguards who assassinated Mrs. Gandhi after Operation Blue Star, attended the rally inside the Golden Temple. She was greeted with shouts of "Blessed are they who say God is truth." A banner praising the two assassins read, "Blessed are Byan Singh and Satwant Singh, because they awoke a nation which was asleep." Bimal Khalsa's son also attended the rally. He was very much awake. His mother made one of the most provocative speeches at the rally. She accused the government of bringing false cases against young Sikhs. She also charged the police with shooting young militants and then claiming they had been attacked. Sikhs killed 22 people in terrorist attacks during Genocide Week. That night, the police were back in the Golden Temple complex. The militants had attacked the temple guards. One of them was brutally stabbed to death with swords. The next day, the Chief Minister of Punjab, who heads the government of the Sikh religious party, ordered plainclothes policemen back into the complex again. They only stayed for 24 hours because the Chief Minister didn't want to cause further offence to the Sikhs. He knows that the complex must be guarded by the Temple Management Committee, not the police, if his government is to survive and peace is to return to Punjab. In spite of the guards' failure to cope with their first challenge, the Chief Minister, Mr. Surjit Singh Barnala, is confident that they can protect the temple.
They have now a force of 7 hours One of them have been killed, of course, recently on the 4th of this month.
But doesn't what happened on the 4th of this month show that that force is not going to be effective?
No, it is going to be effective because that had an effect on the entire force. On that day they were not prepared for such an eventuality, but now probably they will be better prepared and meet such eventualities.
So are you confident that you will not have to send the police into the Golden Temple again?
I am quite confident that there will be no necessity of sending any police force anymore.
In Punjab, they say he who controls the Golden Temple controls the Sikhs. That's why it's so important for the Chief Minister to be proved right. If the Temple Guard cannot protect this shrine, the attempt to find a political solution to the Punjab crisis will collapse. In an attempt to strengthen Barnala's hand, Rajiv Gandhi has now announced that the modern city of Chandigarh will be awarded to Punjab later this month. It's a decision which could cost his party the neighbouring state of Haryana. At present, Chandigarh's official buildings are shared by Punjab and Haryana. The city was purpose-built on the banks of an artificial lake at the foot of the Himalayas. It's an artificial city too. Its broad, tree-lined avenues are almost empty, in marked contrast to the crowded, bustling streets of other Indian cities. For 20 years, Punjab has been striving to win this city for its own capital. Now the militants say Chandigarh is not enough. Rajiv Gandhi's gift may be too little, too late.
Mark Tully, and lastly, tomorrow morning's front pages, which
were behind the assassination of the country's former army chief. 4 motor